All right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And it is finally time to take on the movie that I've been looking forward to more than any other movie, maybe ever in my life, honestly. We are talking about Godzilla vs. Kong. You guys know I'm a big King Kong fan. We just recently did a Breaking It Apart episode on the original 1933 King Kong, which also happened to be the last movie I got to see in a theater before the whole COVID pandemic shut everything down. I saw it on March 15th of 2020 as a anniversary screening. Then everything shut down. I did not get to go to the movies for 13 months, which is just insane considering I'm usually at the movies at least once or twice a week my whole life. So yeah, a weird year to say the least, but my return to the theater, my glorious, triumphant return to the theater was for Godzilla vs. Kong. There's no better way. It's almost like it was meant to be. And I went and saw Godzilla vs. Kong in Dolby, my favorite way to see a movie, of course. As soon as my vaccine had kicked in. They say to wait 2 weeks. I was good. I could have went as soon as I got that vaccine, but they said wait 2 weeks after you get your second vaccine, and that's what I did. 2 weeks to the day, I was in the theater with my wife, with my parents, with my wife's brother. A couple of friends were with me, and we had a blast. It was great. This movie rules. I don't care what anybody says. Godzilla vs. Kong rules, and we are going to talk about it. Joining me for this one is Joe Black, who you have heard here on the show before. I did not expect to get him on here for such a big popcorn blockbuster type of movie, but I'm happy to have him here. We always have fun when we have Joe on the show. So that's coming up here in a second, but before we get to it, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts, and don't forget to follow us on social media at Piecing Pod, and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. So with all that said, let's get to the conversation. It's a long one. We have a lot to say. We've got a lot of Godzilla and Kong to get into. All right, I've been waiting for this for a long time. This is the movie I've been wanting to talk about pretty much, I feel like, since the beginning of this entire podcast. It's Godzilla vs. Kong, and joining me for it, I didn't expect him to be the guest for this one, but hey, sometimes things work out the way they work out. Joe Black is back with us. Joe, how's it going?
It's going great. I did not expect to be the guest on this one either, that's for sure.
Right.
But I mean, yeah. I guess it makes sense, it being the new Rebecca Hall movie.
That's right, yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Getting
that in right away here. I like it. Yeah. Rebecca Hall, let's just start the conversation out with Rebecca Hall.
By all means.
Have you seen someone have more fun delivering ridiculous lines than she has in this?
I've followed her career very closely since she was in Vicky Cristina Barcelona. Mm-hmm. I like everything. I've seen everything, even back cataloged, and I have never had as much joy watching her in a movie as I did when they get really close to like Kong and Godzilla, and she like screams. It cuts from Skarsgard to her, and she's like, ah! Like, and it felt so nice to see her like playing, if you will, like, because she's not like your typical uptight British actress or anything, you know what I mean? But she has like she has a kind of like intelligence to her that lends her to certain roles, and so the fact that like she got to like play in the sandbox, as Shane Black puts it, that was half the joy of the movie for me.
Absolutely, yeah, the Kong whisperer, as it were.
Yeah.
Amazing. But yeah, this movie, like I said, I was so excited for this. I, by the way, came into this 100% squarely as Team Kong. I'm just a big fan of King Kong movies. I know we've talked about this off mic before. I love King Kong. Godzilla, I think, is an interesting character, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. I love that filmmakers get to put whatever they want on Godzilla. I think that's interesting. Mm-hmm. I think that there are some good movies in the canon, which is like, I don't know, probably like 40 movies at this point. It's ridiculous. But generally speaking, though, I don't love Godzilla movies. I love King Kong movies. And while this movie is squarely within a Godzilla series, it feels a little bit more like a King Kong movie, I think.
It's definitely a Kong movie, much like Batman versus Superman was just a Batman movie that Superman was in. This is Kong's movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it starts with him scratching his butt and taking a shower.
That's right. Yeah,
that
is absolutely right.
Well, I feel very similarly. I mean, King Kong for me, the original King Kong, I saw it when I was like 9 years old, and it just like floored me. And they played that movie at the New Beverly a couple of years ago, and even with an audience full of adults, that's one movie that like it's still as good as it was when it came out in 33. Like it still plays the same way. There's plenty of classic movies that don't play as well as they used to. You know what I mean? Like Psycho, honestly, is not scary anymore. It's, you know what I mean?
Right.
But King Kong is still thrilling. And they've just really botched him ever since, in my opinion. I think I told you, I think this is the best Kong movie since 1933.
Yeah.
And Godzilla, I feel similarly about how you feel, except that I think I don't really care for any of those movies, but you would think that I would, because I love absurdity. I love science fiction. That's my bread and butter.
Sure.
But kind of like the James Bond series, it's like, I think my issue with the Godzilla series is that I don't really like the character.
Yeah.
I like all the stuff happening around them. You know what I mean? And I don't dislike Godzilla, but he's not interesting to me. You know,
well, he also is an early example of a problem with a lot of, recent superhero movies, which is, these characters who nothing can stop them. Right. They're like completely invincible, so there's no stakes.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I know that this is one of the main reasons I didn't expect to be on this show, especially was that, like, up until this one, the only Godzilla movie I liked was the Matthew Broderick one. Like,
God.
And that's
Joe Black, ladies and gentlemen.
I know. But that actually has my favorite joke in any movie ever. And it's when Matthew Broderick is doing like a little test, and he's like got the saliva sample, and the girl's like, "A saliva sample? How close did you get to this thing?" And he goes, "I got pretty close." But yeah, like I have so many friends out here who like adults who Godzilla is like genuinely their thing. Like they have figurines, they have, and I've gone to see it with them, the last couple, and they walk out happy as a clam, and I walk out bored to tears.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this one, and Kong aside, this one just right out of the gate was right. You know what I mean? It was right on the money. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start getting into some puzzle pieces. There's plenty of other things around the movie that we'll get into along the way, but what do you got for your first piece?
Okay, the first puzzle piece I have is a bit of there are two moments in the movie where specifically that one moment is from something else 100%. And the first one I was going to do is Lethal Weapon 2.
Sure.
And technically the following sequels, but when Kong, gets ready to get back into the fight, and his shoulder is dislocated, and he does the Martin Riggs, and he just like rams his arm into the side of a building, and cracks his neck, and he's ready to go. That was I try not to fanboy, but Lethal Weapon. I mean, how can you not? Especially in this day.
It's such a wonderful moment.
Right, yeah, and so I feel like the shoulder pop thing is one of those things that will actually outlive Lethal Weapon. Like, and people won't remember where that came from, like kind of like in Team America when Matt Damon is like, Matt Damon. Like, yeah, everybody does that, but 90% of the people don't know or remember where that came from.
Sure, yeah.
But I'm glad to see that the filmmakers with Godzilla vs Kong are keeping Lethal Weapon alive.
Oh yeah. Since you're bringing that up, let's stay in the vein of paying homage to other movies, because I think that's a great one right there. So I'll just throw in there Die Hard and jumping off the building just as the explosion is happening, and we get Kong of all people doing that, jumping off of off of a boat, I think. Yeah, off of the boat as Godzilla is shooting his laser breath through and exploding the entire boat. It's just a wonderful moment. It was in the trailer, but this is one of the few you saw it in the trailer moments that actually is so much bigger and better in the movie, in the moment of the movie. It's just so exciting and so great.
I agree. Yeah, it's not only the exact same pose, but it's
arms
also
up,
it's
jumping.
the exact same shot, and it's perfect. I'm not gonna lie. The first time I saw the movie, this is very funny. I have a real problem with falling asleep during movies. In the theater, like at home, for some reason, but in the theater, it's cold and nice. I don't know. I fell asleep at the beginning of that sequence. I fell asleep right before he showed up, and then like I was kind of like slow, like trying to force myself to wake up during it because the sounds were waking me up, and I woke up just in time for that shot, and I was like, I'm missing something real good here.
Yeah. Oh no.
But I ended up seeing the film a second time while on my honeymoon in St. Thomas in the
Congratulations, by the way, Joe Black.
Thank you very much. Lucky her. We went to the Caribbean cinema on the island that we were on, and that was like kind of the only thing playing.
Yeah,
and much to my wife's chagrin of like, we're gonna go see the new Rebecca Hall movie on our honeymoon. And I said, damn right. But
that's what you signed up for.
Well, seeing that sequence in full, you know what I mean, gave me like, I don't know, like I've never regretted falling asleep in a movie so much. And that payoff is wonderful. I actually just showed her the Die Hard movies like recently. She had never seen them. And would you believe me if I told you that like she really loved 2, which I did not see coming. Like
wow.
That's how I found the right one.
Yeah, Die Hard rewatch I think is on the agenda sometime soon. I haven't seen any of them since they came out, basically.
Right.
It's been forever.
The only one that I rewatch is 3. Like 3, like I like the first one a lot, but 3 is my favorite. 3 is and
I loved 3 at the time. I think I saw 3 in the theater like 5 times when it came out.
Yeah, well, I saw it the once, but I didn't have a car, so
yeah, that works.
I was what year did that come out? 95?
Yes, that sounds about right.
Yeah, I was 7.
Poor Joe, he couldn't make it back.
That's fine.
Well, do you want to stay in the homage vein and go for another one of those?
Yeah, I got one more of those. In the same big battle sequence, the Pulp Fiction came to mind when they reset Kong's little Kong heart there. Either Pulp Fiction or Get Him to the Greek. Where and it's so funny that like at the beginning of the movie when the girl mentions like how powerful the little spaceship was, I was like, okay, I wonder how that'll come back into play. And then as soon as she's like, his heart is slowing down, I was like, I know where we're going with this. Sure, why not? He just got his chest ripped open by a giant lizard. Just, defibrillate him. That's all. Yeah. Work for me.
Yeah. It's so funny that an explosion doesn't hurt at all. Like it doesn't damage the flesh or anything.
No. If anything, it cauterized it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But it had that same like that burst of life is it's almost like a cheat in a filmmaking book. You know what I mean? Like we're gonna get it really low, the energy really low, just to shoot you right back up. You know what I mean? But when it works, it's golden. That's why people do it. And
if I remember correctly, in Godzilla King of the Monsters, which was not very good, I think they kind of did a similar thing with Godzilla, where they like had to do some kind of nuclear blast or something to get him going.
Or like Mothra did something, or like
something like that.
Who gives a shit about that one?
Terrible movie.
Yeah, that was really like frustratingly bad because the first one was just so dull. Like that was my problem with the first one. I was like, whose stupid idea is it? We'll get into that later. But the second one, it seemed like, there we go. Like now we're talking more monsters, more Ice Cube's son. That'll be the fun one. And then we got just another kind of like, it was like muddy and dark and handheld and all these people who keep trying to like redesign the wheel. It's like, nah, dude. Like in Godzilla vs Kong proves that the wheel rolls. You know what I mean? Like
right.
You don't need to change up how you do action scenes. You don't need to like, there's a reason why Godzilla has been around longer than any of us.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and this is a movie that I think lives by the idea of give the people what they want, which a lot of the times it seems like these filmmakers are just like adamantly against that idea and just do not want to give it to us when all we want are to see these monsters fight, and we got it.
Subversion is overrated, especially in an era where people are illiterate.
Yeah, right.
No, I won't do that on this one. I promise. I won't. Do that.
Oh, no.
Godzilla Kong, monkeys and lizards.
I will go on to another piece here, and you know what? I'm gonna go to because you were just talking about how murky and muddy that last Godzilla was. So I'm gonna combine two pieces here. Go with Tron and Speed Racer, and just talk about two movies that are just so over the top, visual eye candy, stylized to the freaking 100th degree with
Hmm.
just neon colors bursting, literally neon colors like bursting through the seams of objects like Kong's axe. You get this like
Right.
glowing neon like cutting through the slits of it. I mean, just colors everywhere, this banging huge electronica infused score. It's like big and like classic Hollywood mixed with electronica.
Yeah.
Um One thing my mom complained about with the movie was that every scene seemed like a big giant crescendo as far as the score is concerned. And I'm like, yes, but that's what we need. It's
Hmm.
Godzilla and Kong fighting. Like, go big, go as big as you can, And so those are just two movies that, and to me personally, Speed Racer is the better of the two, but two movies that just go big and keep going bigger as it continues and go
Right.
just huge with the stylization and the color and just everything that goes into making it just a big huge fun time.
I agree wholeheartedly. And any opportunity to talk about Speed Racer and Tron, I assume you meant Tron Legacy.
Yes, Tron
That's
Legacy.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean both Trons you could, as far as I'm concerned. Those are two of my favorite movies. Speed Racer is great. Speed Racer is. I saw that like the week after Iron Man came out or something like that, and
Hmm.
I remember Iron Man seeing the trailer and thinking it was going to be like the coolest movie ever, and watching the movie and being like, that was cute. And then
Hmm.
Speed Racer, I watched the trailer and I went, oh, that looks fun, And then I watched Speed Racer and I was like, that is the best movie I've ever seen.
It's
Like,
incredible.
but see, they got something right that the people who made this movie got right too, which is, a big criticism that people have about modern action movies is that they're so CGI heavy,
Hmm.
right? Like it's so CGI heavy. And I mean, what are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like you're between a rock and a hard place when you're a filmmaker making Kong and
Yeah.
Godzilla. So I think the solution, much like they did with Speed Racer, is you're not making it's basically reverse Roger Rabbit, where you're making a cartoon with real people in it. You,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's what Speed Racer got right, and that's what this movie got right. That this movie
Yes.
is a cartoon that has, the girl from Stranger Things running around in it. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And that works wonders. I can't stand things like Avatar, where like
Hmm.
it's all CGI world, CGI characters, blah blah blah. And what did he do? He shot it like a normal movie.
Right.
And it's like,
Yeah.
no, dude, like your camera can do anything. Your camera can be anywhere. You know what I mean? Like your actors can express to the nth degree, utilize that.
Yeah.
Um, and this movie, especially more than the last two, especially really did that. So,
Yeah, and there's the Scorsese thing about these movies becoming theme park rides, and that certainly can be a bad thing. But if you're gonna do it, like go all in and just actually have fun with it, and don't hold back whatsoever. And there are some shots in this Adam Wingard. I don't really know him. I haven't seen I don't think any of his other films actually,
he did Your
but
Next, right?
yeah, he did Your Next. He did that Blair Witch reboot, which I didn't see either of those. But he does some really inventive things with the fight scenes and with again, it's huge, just CGI, just a CGI monster fighting a CGI monster in a probably all CGI city environment,
Hmm.
and yet he knows to take that opportunity and run with it as far as what you could do with the camera.
Right, and you could tell that he's more interested in making the movie good than making him look good. Like the movie
Sure.
is not it's not singular in its look, if you will. It's very
Hmm.
just well crafted. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And I really appreciated that. I saw Your Next after all the hype because I don't normally watch movies like that. I was working at
Mhm.
ArcLight at the time, and other than Ty West taking an arrow to the face, I really felt the movie was a complete wash. So I didn't see. I know he came out with one a couple years later, with what was it, the guest
The
or
Guest,
something,
yeah, that's
and I was
another
just
one.
like, oh, the Your Next guy, no thanks.
Hmm.
But maybe I'll go back and watch The Guest because this guy seems to be he does the same thing that Tarantino does. I feel where you talk about this is a movie where you give the audience what they want, but the filmmaker also comes from a place of, well, I am the audience.
Right.
What do I want? You know,
absolutely.
And that makes for a thrilling picture. You know, you mentioned theme park rides, and that's actually my next puzzle piece. Is the King Kong ride at Universal Studios? There's like 3 moments in the film specifically that are straight out of the King Kong ride. I don't know if you've ever been on it.
It's been a while. I definitely have been, but it's been like probably 10, 15 years.
Like, especially him like taking the little shuttle and like looking in, and like that shot where he's like looking into all the windows.
Yeah.
Like, that's like the big moment in the Kong ride, is where he's like, you're like going back and forth on his eyeballs. You know what I mean?
I remember actually, it was about 10 years ago, and I remember we went on it, my wife Gina and I, my girlfriend at the time, and she took a picture of me, just pure joy in my face. I didn't know she was taking a picture as Kong was looking in. I was like, oh. Yeah.
I wish I had screen capped that your face just did too. Yeah. That was when we went to Universal for the first time. I'm from Florida, so we were only 2 hours away. But we didn't go to Universal until I was like 13 for some reason. And probably, money. But that was the ride that I was like, we have to hit this ride. We have to hit King Kong. And it was the first one we did, and there was no line. And I have never been happier for 45 seconds in my life, or however long that ride is.
Sure.
Terrific. I wonder if they'll do a new ride now, kind of like how they have the Spider-Man ride or the Transformers ride, where it's like a CGI interactive ride.
Right.
I wonder if they'll do that now for this one. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that would be a lot of fun. I think
Godzilla
come
vs
up with
Kong
some cool
ride?
stuff.
Yeah, put us in that little shuttle, with the spacesuits.
Yeah.
That's where the movie really took off for me. Because the first time I watched it, I was like, do I like this? I mean, it's okay. It's hit or miss. And then as soon as they were in those suits, I was like, now we're talking.
Yeah, here we go.
You said Tron, too, and you didn't even talk about how the ships have the little light cycle trails.
Right? Yeah, but I mean, look, that's just the use of color and the use of just over-the-top stylization. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. What was that place called? Hollow Earth?
Hollow Earth, yes.
That place is so dope. That's like 2 grounds. Sun coming from somewhere.
Somewhere. Yeah, who knows? But it's there somewhere.
Fuck it, man. I buy it. What's your next one?
So I am going to move on to South Park, the TV show. So there's always every episode of South Park, at least for the last decade or so, maybe not in the very beginning, but has always had an A story and a B story, where each one is, first of all, very inspired by things that have come before in film, and like classic stories of adventure and things like that, but also things that are very in the moment. And they both are more ridiculous than one another. They're like constantly trying to out ridiculous each other, and they eventually kind of, combine and go to the overall plot and create the overall story that we're watching. And this movie absolutely does that too. We've got the main characters, so to speak, that are, pitting Godzilla and Kong against each other, kind of. And you've got this B story with this podcaster and Millie Bobby Brown, who are out to discover what secrets or whatever are at Monarch or whatever the new company, Apex, of course. But these two completely different and we've seen them in giant blockbuster movies before, stories, and they both converge in the same way that every episode of South Park seems to.
Right. South Park, they talk about their I've heard them talk about their writing style before, and I'm trying to remember exactly how they phrased it because they're geniuses. But they said that like their scene structure is always like you go from one scene and the next scene is supposed to be a so then or therefore,
right?
You know what I mean? Like everything folds into each other in some way, and like you said, a lot of adventure stories. I mean, every episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation is an A-B storyline, but very often they don't converge. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, this movie, brilliantly, they do converge, but no characters ever meet.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Never do.
Like that's a really interesting way to go about it. You know what I mean? And that is
the glue is Kyle Chandler, who doesn't meet anybody.
Right, because he's both in Godzilla and King Kong.
I guess so.
Yeah, I remember that King Kong with Peter Jackson is actually where I finally learned Kyle Chandler's name, because I'd seen him pop up in places, and in that he was the best thing in it. So,
Wherever.
yeah. Did you like that one, the Peter Jackson one?
I love the Peter Jackson King Kong. I do. But it's such a just straight remake, just a bloated version of a remake of the 1933 that it kind of like doesn't even count as a different separate thing. And so when you say that Godzilla vs Kong is the best King Kong since the original, I feel like his remake is kind of blended in with the original for me.
Well, see, I felt like his remake just got it all wrong. Like, it didn't understand the movie, because the tragedy of Kong is that she's terrified of him till the end, and all he wants to do is connect with her. You know what I mean? Like that's the tragedy of King Kong. It's not that she loved Kong, and like that's you, Peter. You love Kong because you understand Kong. She doesn't understand Kong. Like, that's not, and that could be interesting if it wasn't so juvenile. And it's, I don't know. I was 17 when that came out, and I was so stoked. I saw it 3 times opening day, and because I wanted to love it. You know what I mean? I wanted so badly, and it just, like, I had to admit these things to myself, because when Jack Black got cast, I was like, that's perfect as Carl Denham.
Right.
And then I watched the movie, I was like, oh, he's not good. Like, and he's a good actor. Why is he not good in this? Why is he, Kyle Chandler was the only person who made any sense in that movie to me.
How does he end up in all these movies?
Because he's really good.
I guess so.
He is. He's really good. He's even good in Wolf of Wall Street, which that's a feat in it of itself.
I just feel like the Peter Jackson's King Kong is kind of an update of the same thing in every sense of the word, like update. Like, it's just just doing everything in a new and bigger way. But I don't know. We could maybe have a longer discussion of Peter Jackson's King Kong at some time, because I love that movie.
Yeah, the canary in the coal mine for me when that was coming out was that Naomi Watts was going to be Ann Darrow, and I was like, that doesn't sound right. And then watched the movie, and I was like, son of a bee sting.
What do you got next?
So the next one I have is a movie that I really despised, but like won Best Picture, which is The Shape of Water.
Okay.
In The Shape of Water, you had the she was also deaf, right? And she could communicate with the fish monster, with sign language and stuff like that. And that's what, their bond was built on, I suppose. And this movie, the little girl, Rebecca Hall's adopted island daughter, being the only one who understands Kong's inability to, to communicate who he is, was really beautiful. Much better, I'm going here, than in The Shape of Water, which I found to be, like, shockingly offensive. Because, like, everyone's like, yes, it's a metaphor for Black Americans and homosexuality and minorities. And I was like, right. And in 2017, we're still comparing minorities to fish monsters that we want to have sex with. Like that's so grossly offensive. But King Kong, like, the innocence of a child, being able to understand the innocence of Kong, like, and that being their connection, and there being no betrayal. You know what I mean? That was beautiful. Yeah, much better. I wonder what Guillermo del Toro thinks of this movie, because he likes his kaijus.
He loves his monsters. I don't know if you have it on your list, but Pacific Rim, certainly.
I actively avoid that one. So.
Yeah, that could go on a list. I'm not that big a fan of Pacific Rim. I'm not a big fan of many kaiju things, surprisingly, considering that I love the idea of watching monsters on screen. I just don't think these movies generally tend to do it very well. But definitely, there's a lot of parallels with Pacific Rim. But The Shape of Water, I think, good puzzle piece to bring in here.
Yeah, Pacific Rim, that's another one where I watched that and I was like, this is horribly written. The acting is terrible in it, and it just is nonsense. And I said to I went to Amoeba the next day, the record shop, and I was telling them that I just saw it, and that I was like, usually Guillermo del Toro is such a good filmmaker, blah, blah. And the guy said to me, he goes, really? Name another good Guillermo del Toro movie. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I guess just Pan's Labyrinth. Like, the rest are just kind of like, they're kind of schlock, which is not a criticism, but it kind of hit me. I was like, yeah, you know what? That's true. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sitting here trying to like defend a movie because it's made by the guy who did Blade 2. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, I suppose that's an interesting point of view there. I don't know. I like Guillermo del Toro,
Yeah.
but Pacific Rim though, just yeah. I will sit here and defend Godzilla vs Kong to my dying day. Like when people call it dumb or whatever, it's like a stupid movie, but it's got monsters fighting. And I'll try to defend it by saying, but it gives us what we want. It's fun. Who cares if it's dumb? It's a giant monster movie with Kong and Godzilla fighting. Technically, that description should help a movie like Pacific Rim, but it just doesn't because it's not fun at all.
Right. Well, when in Pacific Rim, when I barely remember it because it was so terrible, but I remember they're like fighting this one monster for a really long time, and then out of nowhere they just pull a sword out. And I'm like, well, that would have been useful 25 minutes ago. Like, why aren't you using your sword to fight this thing? And the Pacific Rim, the problem with that movie is it didn't take the time to think things through, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, now they have a sword. You can tell that like they're like, oh, and then he pulls out a sword as they're writing the script. But now you got Godzilla versus, I keep calling it Kong versus Godzilla. You can see where my loyalty lies. But Godzilla versus Kong, that axe, right? Mm-hmm. Like that axe, it comes from somewhere, if you will. Yeah. You know what I mean? And not only does it come from somewhere, but it has a history to it, and it has that they sum up in 8 seconds. You know what I mean? That it's a piece from like one of the Godzillas defeated. Blah 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 blah. That's why it's recharged by his energy. That's what you do. You get us into it. You know what I mean? You get us excited about it, and then you utilize it. And so it's thrilling. And there's another shot in this movie that's straight out of Pacific Rim, but better. It's the shot where it's in like when Godzilla and Kong are fighting, and it's inside like an office building.
Oh, that's a great shot.
With the chairs, the conference room, and the chairs are jittering around while Kong is slamming, and then they finally slam in the thing. It reminded me of that shot in Pacific Rim where is it the monster? No, it's the robot. Like punches all the way through a building. And the camera's like with the fist, and then it stops right before one of those. What is that little thing called with the balls that's on a desk where you like throw one and it hits the other?
Oh yeah, the
whatever that
energy,
whatever
but ball thing.
It like goes all the way and then barely just taps that a little bit, and it goes back and forth. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of a cute joke, but not because it's nonsense. Like that thing would fall over already, and like the energy, And I only criticize it for that because I remember they were like, oh, it's so authentic. Like you could see dust falling off buildings as the machines walk past them. And I'm like, yeah, well, the fucking ball machine thing would have fallen over too. I'm just throwing that out there. It's stupid. I'm that asshole watching a movie, but I'm like, Godzilla vs. Kong, right on the money.
It rocks. Well, I'll go to another piece here. And I'm going to go with Ant-Man and the Wasp. So this is, to me, personally, one of my favorite of the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, and I love it because it's just a light, silly, fun blockbuster movie with just the right amount of silliness and ridiculousness, and also great action. It's super over the top, so super fun. Also has a lot of like the same kind of trippy space travel things, although in that it's going into this multiverse, tiny, infinitesimal, small, whatever thing. And that turns out to be trippy travel mechanics involved. And here we're going into the Hollow Earth, which also happens to need trippy travel mechanics because of the inversion of gravity as you go through that or whatever it is. But regardless, just pure fun. And some people don't want to accept that a movie can just be pure fun. And that's what both of these movies are to me.
Right. Well, I mean, when you try to fake pathos, that's the most uninteresting thing you could do in a movie, to me. You know what I mean? When you try to manufacture pathos, and it's sincerity is key, authenticity is key. And Godzilla versus Kong said, well, I mean, it's Godzilla versus Kong. You know what I mean? Like that was their attitude. What can't we do?
Yes.
And that's the kind of thing that I'm 100% on board for. Ant-Man and the Wasp. Yeah, no, I wanted to say that I liked that one, but I didn't. But I found it less offensive than I find offensive in the filmmaker-y sense. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Than I do like something like Infinity War or Civil War or because they are just fun little heist adventure movies. And either that's your bag or it's not your bag, and it's not my bag.
Right.
I felt the same way about the Spider-Mans, the Marvel Spider-Mans, where it's like, finally, here are Marvel movies specifically designed for 8-year-olds. You know what I mean? Like for like the 8 to 12-year-olds. Like and that's pure what they are. And that's why they're kind of my favorite of the phase 4 Marvel movies. Like
Who could keep count?
Yeah, who cares anymore? I see all this stuff for like WandaVision and Falcon, and I'm like, isn't it over? Like,
haven't we gotten enough?
Didn't we see this through already? You know, and you talk about Martin Scorsese saying the thing about, you know, Marvel movies aren't cinema, and that started that whole, you know, whatever. I think I'm seeing you're wearing a Martin Scorsese Marvel shirt.
Sure am. Yeah.
Brilliant. But see, again, that's why King Kong works. It literally is a theme park ride. Like we were saying earlier, it has the moments from the theme park ride in it. And I think that's, you know, where Scorsese was misunderstood. That, like, he wasn't complaining that these movies are getting made. He's complaining that these are the only movies getting made.
Right. Yeah. You know? Or at least the only movies that get any of the air in the room once they are made. So.
Right. Exactly.
So what do you got for your next piece?
My next piece is actually the last one that I have. Okay. And it's a bit of a cheat piece because it's an opportunity to talk about the greatest film franchise of all time, which is the Fast and the Furious.
Of course.
Yes, I will. This piece is not just for this Kong Godzilla movie alone, but for the whole Godzilla Kong series that's been happening here, where what the Fast and the Furious has done for movies has been kind of the only, like, I describe it like Great Gatsby, where it's the green light at the end of the dock, you know, at the end of they understood in this era where, like, Christopher Nolan and the Bourne movies brought us down to this gritty, realistic, blah 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 world. Like, they were the only movies out there that were like, well, no, like, that being gritty and dark and realistic doesn't make a movie authentic or interesting or better. Like, what makes a movie good is the sincerity at which you approach it. You know what I mean? If you, the filmmaker, or you, the actor, believe what's happening, then it will work. Right. Like, truly, like, you know, and Vin Diesel, it's proof, Vin Diesel and Justin Lin really, like, they say, okay, so, like, in this part, the tank, you know, is coming and she has to jump off of it, and Vin Diesel's going to launch off of his car, save her as she's, you know, flying over the overpass, and they're going to slam into another car, and that's how they're going to save her. Okay, that's what we're doing today. And they believe it. And I think Vin Diesel is the actual key to it, because, I mean, even what was that movie, Bloodshot? Yeah. Like, it was so good. And it was so good because Vin Diesel was like, so he's like a soldier and he, like, can't die. Okay, let's do it. You know?
Let's do it.
And the Fast and the Furious movies have gotten more and more absurd as they've gone on. You know what I mean? Like, they were never super realistic. You know, even the first one is, you know, very machismo, you know, whatever. But as they've gone on, they said, they were like, when they got to the second one, they're like, oh, okay, so we can, like, jump off of a pier and land on a yacht, and you think that's cool? Okay. You know, like, they just kept pushing what we would allow them to do. And by the time we got to 8, which I just rewatched the whole franchise because F9 is coming out and will hopefully be the greatest movie of all time. Fate of the Furious, I like watched it yesterday. That's my favorite one. And it's my favorite one because it is so beautifully absurd. We talk about Godzilla or Kong getting brought back to life with the spaceship, you know? And I was watching that in the theater and going, I buy it. Yep, that's right. Fucking, you know, adrenaline shot to the heart. That's all he needs. Yeah. I was thinking that in Fate of the Furious, where at the end, spoilers, where Dom has the heat-seeking missile. Has the heat-seeking missile coming toward him, and he's driving on the ice, and he has to take out the submarine, and what he ends up doing is he, like, flies off of this, like, breaking piece of ice and hits the submarine as it's, like, coming up just in the right way, and his back tire hits it and spins around the front of the submarine so that the missile ends up hitting the submarine instead of him, and it explodes. And his car's flipping and it's on fire, and he jumps out of it as it's flipping on the ice on fire. It's like, okay, we've seen this before in a Fast and Furious movie. It's great. But then this gigantic fireball comes up and it's coming toward him, and this is it for Dom. But then suddenly all the other cars come out of nowhere and like surround him in some like cocoon of some kind that protects him from a fireball.
Sure.
And I was sitting there watching it, and immediately I was like, I buy it.
Yeah.
Like, I buy it. They saved him. Like, that's all I care about in this moment, is that the themes of the movie have come together to save the hero from literally from hell. Like,
Yes.
you know, and that's the language that's missing in summer blockbusters. And that's where movies like the Marvel movies have really just shit the bed, in my opinion, where it's like they take themselves, I don't want to say too seriously because people seem to misunderstand what I mean, because they are silly cartoon whatever, but like they think too highly of themselves. They overreach, you know. These are movies for children. You know, no matter how cool Captain America is, he will always be something that was meant for a 10-year-old. You know? And there's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to justify it as adults. It doesn't have to be real or gritty or like whatever for it to be meaningful. We can still enjoy it, you know?
Yeah.
And hopefully that's the lesson taken from Godzilla vs. Kong, is that like we don't have to be afraid to just enjoy something. We don't have to justify enjoying something, you know? And what was the name of this filmmaker?
Adam Wingard.
Yeah. What he showed in this, to me, is what a true filmmaker is supposed to do, which a true filmmaker is supposed to know more than the audience, right? And to deliver what he knows in a palatable way and not get in the way of that.
I would say, to add on to that, also to care.
Right.
Like, to actually care about what they're making so much, because they're, you know, and I guess as much as I love Peter Jackson's King Kong, I could see how someone might say that can lead to, you know, overblown and whatever you want to level at it. Yeah, caring too much. But still, you got to care. It can't just be like, oh, we're making this movie, so here we're gonna do A, B, C, and D. Like, it's got to actually come from a place of wanting to see these characters and these scenarios play out.
Right, and wanting and caring more about them than you do yourself, though. So like that, I think it's Tarantino said it, where he said, if you truly love cinema to your core, you can't make a bad movie. And what he means by that is that, like, if you care more about the movie or movies more than you do about what you like or what you want to say, or what, you know, if you care more about it than that, then your movie will be good. You know, like filmmakers, especially today, are so, we see like these two polar extremes. We see really indulgent movies, or we see really just cookie cutter manufactured movies. You know what I mean? And we got so sick and tired of the manufactured movies that that filmmakers became indulgent, but you don't balance a scale by tipping it. You know what I mean?
Right.
You center yourself, you find your center, you find the perfect balance. And I think that Godzilla vs. Kong is that perfect balance. It's like, yes, we could nitpick the fact that this podcaster is admitting over his podcast that he's a sleeper cell inside of this, you know, facility. And yes, we could nitpick that, like, there is no sun in the center of the earth and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Or Millie Bobby Brown listens to a podcast while staring at her screen at the art of the podcast.
Well, I mean,
that bugged the hell out of me. Do you when you listen to Piecing It Together, do you look at my puzzle pieces the whole time?
Yes, especially because I'm driving. And
while driving.
I like to have my, you know, like the little holder for my phone for GPS. I put that up there, and I actually just put your profile picture, and I think, what a guy, while driving.
Even better.
But yeah, but again, it's almost like a great romantic comedy, where it's not like, you're not trying to make the audience guess, will they or won't they get together? You want the audience to insist that they get together. Like, for the audience, they have to get together. And in this movie, you know, you're not trying to make it realistic or make it even make sense. You want the audience to want these people to succeed, to want these people to go on this adventure, to want, you know what I mean? So like, that's the goal. And they pulled that off flawlessly. Well, absolutely not flawlessly. I mean,
maybe not.
There's a couple little things where I'm like, well, you know, you try a little harder. But overall, like, I can't even imagine making a movie on this scale, though. Like
Oh.
that's another thing that like just does not get enough appreciation. That like, dude, if you can make a movie this big and make it like work, like I think of that every time I watch the Blues Brothers. When like at the end when they're going into the building and all the SWAT and all the Marines and all the army and all the, you know, are coming in all at once, there's thousands of extras, and all I'm sitting there thinking is like, that's a lot of costumes. You know, like
Right.
I just got done making my 14th movie, and like I did the costumes on it for like 10 people for the whole movie, and I was just like, I don't know how I'm gonna keep this together. But then I see like that one, I see something like Godzilla vs Kong, and I'm just like, they had to make all those jumpsuits. Like that's a lot of mental real estate, you know, and I have such a respect for people who can make movies like this.
It's a whole fucking other game. Like
Yeah.
dealing with all this stuff. It's crazy.
And we talk about, you know, we've devalued it. You know what I mean? We expect, we're entitled to it. Give us our next Marvel movie. It's been a year since Marvel. Man, and it's like, yeah, these take time. It's a lot of work.
Seriously. Well, I will go with another piece, and that was your last piece, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, like I said before we started recording, I have like a whole bunch of other like little ones, but I'm just gonna close out with two more just to wrap it up. I think these are the ones that I want to finish up on. I could have gone with a number of crossover event type films of characters matching up with one another. The one I think is the most important to bring up is Freddy versus Jason. Because, I mean, these two titans that people have wanted to see fight forever. And of course, we got King Kong versus Godzilla back in the 60s. But this is so much better. And I mean, that was silly. This is a movie. This is a movie that I'll watch many times over the rest of my life. But as far as going to the story, though, you know, you've got humans having to set these two unstoppable forces at each other, so that way it's really the only way they're going to get out of this situation where one of them is going to kill everybody basically if they don't get another one who technically could kill everybody too to kill that one. And so they just kind of got to set them at each other and get out of the way. And so I thought that as far as all of the versus movies, this is the one that I think fits the best.
I agree. And I actually saw that movie. My film teacher took me to go see that movie, oddly enough.
Nice.
And I had never seen any of the Freddy or Jason movies. They just never interested me. So that was my first one. And that made me, I liked that movie so much that I ended up going and watching the actual franchises, and I ended up loving every Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I thought they were brilliant, all of them. The Jason ones were a little, but kind of like Kong versus, you know, Godzilla, Freddy is a character, Jason is a presence. You know what I mean? And so there's not a whole lot you can do with just a presence, much like Godzilla, in my opinion. You know, Godzilla is a lizard who wants to be left alone. Yeah. You know, King Kong and Freddy are personalities. There's something to latch on to there. Right. You know what I mean? I think that this movie, like that movie, is just pure, like, either you get it or you don't. Yeah, you know? I think that's absolutely right. Yeah. And, you know, I talk about all these things about overreaching pathos because you talk about the other versus movies, like Batman vs. Superman, I think is a masterpiece because it does that very thing that I was talking about, like, you know, creating pathos out of these comic book characters for children, but it actually pulls it off. You know, which is why, and with some flaws like any movie, but like, which is why I'm such a big fan of that movie, because it's like they did the impossible. You know, as far as I'm concerned, with Batman versus Superman. You know, speaking of Batman versus Superman, I wasn't going to bring it up because I feel like every movie podcast that talked about this movie brought this up, but is there any way for a movie like this to exist where the two people who are in the title, the verses, aren't going to team up at the end to fight a bigger foe? Like, well, I mean, that is Freddy versus Jason. Yeah, that's the only one. It really is. Yeah, because I mean, like, well, I mean, you're already starting out in a bad place. You know what I mean? You're starting out in like, oh, everybody likes both of these characters. Yeah, you can't kill one. Yeah, like, but not in the original Godzilla vs Kong. I mean, depending on where you were, either King Kong swims away or Godzilla swims away at the end. I mean, for those of you who haven't seen it, that is how it ends. It literally, the American version ends with they both razzle and fall into the water, and it's like who survived, and then it cuts to like King Kong just like swimming home. Yeah, and like a news anchor's like, "We wish the monkey well on his way home. Safe travels." Yeah. I mean, like from the get go, one of my kind of like going into this movie was that of course they're going to team up at the end and fight something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like this whole franchise though has just been such a, people talk about the Star Wars reboot being a shit show. Like this is like this franchise is the biggest shit show. Like that first Godzilla, what's his name? Gareth Edwards. Just the worst idea for a movie.
One of the most boring movies I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, well, a realistic take on Godzilla? How dumb do you have to be? Because like the joy of Godzilla is watching him destroy buildings. But if you see people getting hurt and people like, no, like that's not fun, and if that was their angle, then good luck to them, was my attitude. But then when I saw it, I was like, yeah, you tried to have your fucking cake and eat it too, you fatty.
People will do backflips trying to defend that movie, and I don't get it.
Well,
I don't get it at all.
See, but that's the thing. David, that's the secret to life, is that people spend most of their lives pretending, but the problem is that they don't know that they're pretending. Right. I'm serious. Like, that's the crippling problem with this country, at least. But yeah, that was just like such a terrible, like such a flop, such a horrid idea, a realistic take on Godzilla. And then they did, the next one was the Kong Skull Island. And what I liked about that movie so much was that the director said, "What are you talking about? It's King Kong. Like
it's this fucking is King Kong.
Yeah, this is a silly movie." And that movie is really, it's not good because it's like, it's just kind of, well, first of all, it's poorly cast other than Sammy Boy, and it's really like but the story is such an interesting idea.
Shea Wiggum is fun in it.
Wiggum. Oh, he's in that one?
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah,
I forgot he's in that.
He's fun in it, but yeah, it's a very mixed bag though.
Right, but I mean, the opening shot of that is the best shot in the whole franchise.
It's great.
Where the guy falls out of the sun, brilliant. But that one got it right, and then they tried yet again with Godzilla to have their cake and eat it too, which is like, oh, they liked that we went a little bigger with King Kong, but we're gritty, realistic Godzilla, and they made that terrible King of Monsters movie that like only Godzilla fans liked, and I think only Godzilla fans liked it because at least there were more monsters this time.
Right.
And like finally hitting that sweet spot was such a nice thing to see for this franchise because a lot of money goes into these movies. Like,
yeah,
and
it's
a lot
crazy.
And if they are like Scorsese fears, if these are the kinds of movies that are going to be the only thing in theaters ever now, you know what I mean? Like, at least do your best to make them like honest and true, like, and this is a step in the right direction. I really hope that F9 follows it in that right direction. Because Mortal Kombat really, for those of you who haven't seen it, Mortal Kombat is like a step backwards in a way. It's almost like primitive at this point. People will look at this new Mortal Kombat and be like, oh yeah, that definitely came out in like 2021. Where like it wants to have pathos, but it's like, nah, dude, that guy just used his hat to cut that demon in half. Like this is a silly movie. But yeah, I am glad to see the pendulum swinging back in the other direction, and eventually it'll swing way too far in the other direction. Like,
of course,
and we'll be back to being like, come on, take it seriously again. James Bond has to be real.
Speaking of silly movies, I'm going to close it out with one last puzzle piece that I had to bring into the conversation, and that is the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson vehicle, Rampage, the video game adaptation, which I love. I know people think is just too stupid to defend, but I love that movie so much. And that movie proved that you can have fun with giant monsters fighting each other. You can just set these giant CGI monstrosities at each other, have them attack, not be super serious like we talked about Pacific Rim earlier in the conversation, not be, rubber suit monsters like the old 70s and on back type things. Just go big, go huge, and have monsters destroying stuff in broad daylight, and just make it for the people who want to see that, people like me.
Yeah, we've never talked about this before, but I like Rampage. I saw it in the theater.
It's so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, I could watch him read a phone book. He's so great.
Yeah.
And I think that he kind of saves it from The Rock. The Rock and I are on bad terms right now because he just.
Well, you're Team Vin, obviously. So.
Well, I mean, like, to be Team Vin means you've seen the movies, but but like, well, The Rock, his ego is just in the way. He can't not play The Rock anymore. And that was starting to be the problem with the Fast and the Furious movies. Is that like Hobbs is so badass in the first one, like he's a hard-nosed, like he's scary, and by the time we get to like 7 and 8, he's like soccer practice, Tay-Tay concerts. Okay, you were doing Jumanji at the same time, got it. But Rampage, Rampage. But see, I will say this: I think that Rampage was like not. It was the right idea, but not super well executed. Like meaning that so again, I really like it, but it was like you could tell somebody wanted movies to be like this again, if you will. Like was the feeling. Like I want to take movies back to this kind of movie making, not this stupid realistic Godzilla bullshit. And but that it obviously didn't have the source material, and it didn't have like the filmmaking behind it. It was, but it was
right.
I was happy to see a movie like that.
Yeah. But also had to get out from under the fact that it's a video game. And that's always a little bit of an uphill battle.
Not for me, but I'm a sucker for video game movies, man. Super Mario Brothers is one of the reasons why I'm a filmmaker. Like, I love those. And the people who talk shit about this new Kong, like you were saying, the people are like, it's so stupid, it's so ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. Those, David, are the people who haven't seen it, first of all, but are also the kind of people that still think that they're smart because they tell people wrestling is fake. You know what I mean? It's like, no wrestling fan thinks wrestling is real.
Yeah.
They get something that you don't, and you're jealous. That's
right.
And that's how I feel about this Kong, especially. Like, of course, there are things you could nitpick, but if you nitpick this movie, you're an asshole. Because I think because it did what it set out to do. You know what I mean? And you cannot say that about any of the other movies in this franchise. So,
absolutely. Well, I'll go ahead and do the finished puzzle here, and then we'll get into some closing thoughts. We talked about, of course, this movie paid homage to Lethal Weapon 2, Die Hard, and Pulp Fiction. Then we went on to Tron Legacy, Speed Racer, the King Kong Universal Ride, South Park, The Shape of Water, Pacific Rim, Ant-Man and the Wasp, the Fast and Furious series, Freddy vs. Jason, and Rampage. Joe, you got any closing thoughts? Anything we didn't quite get to with this?
No, I mean, but that list sounds like just a great weekend of watching movies. Like,
right? What a blast!
Yeah, I think that's the first time that, like, save for The Shape of Water, I'm like, that's a list of movies that, like, now I want to go watch all of those movies.
Yeah,
that's funny. That's never happened, at least between you and I, before on a list like this.
Seriously. The only other thing I would mention, you brought up when we were talking about Rampage, Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I think Demian Bichir doing the similar, just chewing the freaking scenery the whole time, just having such a blast, knows exactly what movie he's making. Also, I'd say the same for Alexander Skarsgard, who I think is just having so much fun with this role.
Yeah.
So the two of them, just shout out to them for just getting it.
I agree. And Skarsgard and Senior Bob from Hateful Eight these are good actors. You know what I mean? These are good actors who showed up to play. These aren't people who need work. These aren't people who, are trying to like make a name for themselves. These are people who said, I want to be a part of this. Much like Samuel L. Jackson in Kong Skull Island. Like these, and that to me is a real actor. That's the difference between like somebody like that and somebody like Leonardo DiCaprio, where it's
Yeah.
like, no, like I'm here to like I'm here because I love film,
Right.
you know,
right.
and that shows. And again, good on Rebecca Hall, because she could have shown up and like not given a shit, and I still would have thought she was brilliant in the movie, because I mean I'm only human.
Right,
But
of course.
but again, she even understood that, like, how wonderful to be a part of that thing, Kong
Yeah.
and Godzilla. You're a part of that now forever. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And she has some incredible lines, man, and so many just fun, there can't be two apex predators or whatever. Like so many
Kong bows
to
to
no one,
no.
I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that character, though, I got to give it to the writing too, though. Like, I love that she never betrays her daughter. Like,
Right.
even when Skarsgård is like, tell him his family's down there, right? Like, she
Yeah.
straight up says to her daughter, like, his family might be down there.
Yeah.
And that's true. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
like
maybe.
she stays true to her, to who she is throughout the whole movie. And that's a hero. That's somebody that I want to see. I don't give a shit about Aaron Taylor Johnson trying to get back to his wife because, like, he just got out of the military. That's such
Right.
boring storytelling. That's
so boring.
It's like, so, like, what book did you pull that out of? But something like that. Like, I want to see Rebecca Hall succeed because she is doing her best to stay true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a fucking hero. You know,
Hell
like
yeah.
that's and that's why I love Dom. Like, dude, the opening to Fast 8 when he tosses the keys to the guy after, instead of taking his car, he's
Yeah.
like, you learned to respect others, right? And fucking Charlie Theron later on in the movie, he's like, you gave him his car back after he blah blah. You're getting weak, Dom. He goes, nah, I did that. Now he's changed forever. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
If I'm not on the
What-
show for F9, I'm never gonna forgive you.
Oh
Never.
yeah, we'll do it for sure. We'll do it for sure. One very quick story, and then we'll wrap this thing
Yeah.
up. But when Demian Bichir first appeared on screen, my buddy Will, who I went to see this with, he leaned over and whispered to me, "Is that Colin Farrell?" And the idea of Colin Farrell in 2021 doing a Mexican accent in a big blockbuster made me laugh so hard. Died.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
You should do one of those deep fake videos and put Colin Farrell's face over it. That's
Just
pretty
amazing.
good. That's really good.
All right, Joe. Well, is there any other movies that you saw recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, not that I'd like to recommend to the listeners, but I will say that I love this movie that I saw called Doc, starring Stacey Keach and Faye Dunaway. And I also loved another movie that I watched called The January Man with Kevin Kline. And of course, when I told my friends who are film people that I love both those movies, they all were like, those are terrible. But I will recommend Jeffrey Dean Morgan. You just made me think of it. He was in this brilliant, the first time I ever saw him, he was in a brilliant horror comedy called Dead and Breakfast. It's a zombie comedy from like 2003, 2004, where he plays the sheriff of a small town, where a bed and breakfast, these tourists, of course, open up a ancient Chinese box of evil and zombies
Nice.
get unleashed. And David Carradine is in it a little bit. And if you haven't seen that movie, I'm not really big into horror movies, but like that movie is a wonderful horror comedy, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan gives a star-making performance in that movie. He's also really fat in that movie.
Oh,
He was like a heavy set dude in that movie, like, and he obviously shaped up afterward. You know what I mean? But like,
yeah.
You also get to see zombies rap in that movie.
Ooh, now I'm in. I
Yeah.
gotta watch this.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And that title, come on, Dead and Breakfast.
Yeah, it's great. That
What about
rules.
you? Have you seen anything?
My movie watching has been really kind of weird lately because leading up to Godzilla vs Kong, knowing that was going to be my first movie back to the theater. By the way, since a anniversary screening of King Kong, the original 1933 on March 15th of last year. So knowing that it was going to be my first time back to the theater, I watched a whole bunch of like King Kong and Godzilla related movies leading up to this. And so
Right.
that was most of my movie watching, and most of them are not very good.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. Well, Joe, you want to plug what you got going on with your films right now?
I mean, yeah, I'm just very excited about the new one. My wife is in it. It's her first film, and she is just she's such a fucking star. Like, and that's not coming from like the husband side of me. That comes from like I made the foolish mistake of writing a movie that like 75% of it is one person on a telephone stuck in her. You know what I mean? And the whole crew, like, of 5 of us, we sat there looking at that monitor every day, just like, holy shit, so I'm very excited that, like, to see one of my films come to life in a way that they never have before. And it's all because of her. So it's called Natasha Hall, and I'll be screening it all over the country the second half of the year here when things reopen up. And hopefully it'll be the first one we kind of get out there in the big, hoopla.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, Joe, thank you so much for doing this. And yes, we will definitely be back for Fast 9 when that comes out.
Oh, if it comes out. I'm still, skeptical. Thank you so much for having me.
Are you obsessed with movies? Come on down to sunny tropical Akron, Ohio to Binge Movies, the only video store in the world secretly owned and operated. Our courteous and polite staff are joined by film critics and podcasters from around the world to review, rank, and eliminate all but those movies most worthy of preservation for all time, even beyond the end times, and most worthy of your time. Our staff also has perfectly curated shelves just to make your entertainment choices that much easier. So come on down to Binge Movies, available on all of your favorite podcast apps. We've got the hits.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Joe Black about Godzilla vs. Kong. Let us know if we missed any major puzzle pieces. Obviously, we could have gotten into a lot more. We barely even touched on the Hollow Earth. There's so much going on in there. I actually had like 3 or 4 puzzle pieces just based on Hollow Earth alone. But, it's been over an hour. That's long enough. We did a long enough episode, I think. But hey, if you have any puzzle pieces you think that we should have talked about, why don't you get in touch with me? You can get in touch on Twitter at PiecingPod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we're always continuing the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. Or you could just contact me through the website, piecingpod.com. Go check it out. Check out all our past episodes. Check out everything else we got going on there, and get in touch. Also, if you really like what we're doing here on the show, make sure you share it. Thank you so much to all the listeners that are out there. Sharing the show really gets it in front of new ears, and we are trying to appeal to new ears every time we put a new episode out. So, I just said ears twice in a row, and I don't know, it feels weird. I don't like saying the word ears. It's a weird word. New listeners. We want to appeal to new listeners. So share us with all of your friends and let them know about Piecing It Together. Aside from that, we also have a Patreon, I should mention, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus content and advanced content from Piecing It Together, from Awesome Movie Year, from my music career, and anything else I got going on. I also do these month wrap-up things that I've been doing the last couple of months. I'll be recording another one of those this week, actually, to put up for May 1st. But yeah, I always try to put more and more bonus content on the Patreon. It's patreon.com/bydavidrosen. Check it out. If you like what we're doing here on the show, subscribe, help support the show, and the more subscribers we get, the more extra bonus content we're going to make for it. So go check that out. So that does it for this conversation. Let's close this thing out with a piece of music. And, I'm so excited about Godzilla vs. Kong that puts me in a good mood. I think I'm going to play us out with a preview of some new music. How about that? This is a untitled track, and it's not quite finished yet, but it's something I'm working on for my next album. So let's just play it, and hopefully you like it. And hopefully I get this album finished soon and we'll have another album out there. In the meantime, though, you can check out my latest album, David Rosen. It's available on all the streaming services and on iTunes and on Bandcamp. But for now, here's a brand new piece of music.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.